This is Emily Guy Birken, and you're listening to Deep Thoughts About Stupid Shit, because pop culture is still culture. And shouldn't you know what's in your head? On today's episode, I will be sharing my deep thoughts about the movie Labyrinth with my sister, Tracie Guy Decker, and with you. Let's dive in.
Have you ever had something you love dismissed because it's just pop culture? What others might deem stupid shit, you know matters. You know it's worth talking and thinking about. And so do we. So come overthink with us as we delve into our deep thoughts about stupid shit. This show is a labor of love, but that doesn't make it free to produce. If you enjoy it even half as much as we do, please consider helping to keep us overthinking. You can support us at our Patreon. There's a link in the show notes. Or leave a positive review so others can find us. And of course, share the show with your people.
So, Tracie, I know you've seen Labyrinth. I feel like we saw it in the theater when it came out, but
Maybe.
I know for sure I remember watching it at Dad's house on VHS with you. But tell me what you know about Labyrinth.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it because we were scheduled to record, and the thing that comes to mind the strongest, honestly, is the soundtrack, which I adored. I had it on CD.
Good.
I invited my smart speaker to play it for me as we were getting ready, and I was singing along to the 5 or so Bowie songs that he wrote specifically for the soundtrack that I just really enjoyed. So the things I remember about it, the most clearly from those early days when we were watching it as kids is honestly David Bowie's costume.
No.
There was some
awakening.
Yeah, I guess that's the word for it. Company. I also apparently I have a thing for men in eye makeup because, Mr. Spock was my first TV crush. So, and Nimoy was wearing that kind of blue eyeshadow, and Bowie's got some serious eye makeup going on.
He's rocking some serious eye makeup.
Yeah, and I really, really, of course, the pants and the codpiece I think had a lot to do with my awakening, but I think the eye makeup didn't hurt for me, and that weird wig, and that the thing with the spheres, the way I don't even know how to describe it,
the juggling, basically. Yeah,
but it's not because they stay on his hands. I thought that was so cool. I met a woman when I was a prospective student at Oberlin. We went to prospective students day, and she had practiced that and could do it and pulled it because of that movie. And I just thought that was amazing. The coolest thing ever.
So yeah, I know you know this, but that wasn't Bowie. That was
I know.
Yeah, it was a guy behind him. And there's a part of me that is glad that there is at least one thing that Bowie can't do.
Yeah, he was pretty remarkable. Yeah, so those are the things and there are specific moments that kind of shine out as bright lights, the riddle between the two door knockers. One always tells the truth, and trying to figure out that riddle and how exciting that was. And other moments that kind of stand every once in a while. If I'm faced with a big a smell that I don't care for, then I become Ludo. Smells bad. So
I do the same.
It's in there. It's shouldn't you know what's in your head? This is definitely in my head. And I can't say I've never examined it because there have been different articles that have come across my social media feed or whatever that I'm sure we'll get into a little bit of different interpretations about what is really, I'm putting quotes around that word, going on behind this fantasy novel that I just found disturbing and decided I didn't want to know. So I think it's time for me to follow you down this path to see a little bit more about what's in my head. So what you got? Why are we talking about this? Why does this one matter?
For a couple of reasons. I can recall loving the movie from early on. Similarly to you, I was 7 when it came out. So you must have been 10. I just remember really liking it when Bowie was on screen. I just really, really liked when he was there, even though I also really loved Sarah and her friends. Ludo in particular was always one of my favorites because I loved that he was friends with the rocks and things like that. I have been wanting to kind of revisit this movie for a couple of reasons. One is because, like you said, it's part of the furniture of my mind. Another has to do with my just complete adoration of David Bowie. He is one of my heroes, and there are aspects of his life and career that are not necessarily heroic. So, and this is one of them where it's not that I think he did anything wrong in this movie or anything like that, but there's some weirdness. He was 38 years old when this movie came out, and he's played as being in love with 15-year-old Sarah, who was played by 15-year-old Jennifer Connelly. So that's a part that was written and he played, but still there's some weirdness in there. It's the kind of thing you're talking about. Like, you come across it, like, I don't know if I want to look at this. So those are the two big reasons. And then also, like, we've talked about Jim Henson twice already, sort of. We talked about Muppets in Space, which came out before or after Henson died. And we talked about Fraggle Rock. But I also just really want to kind of talk about the genius of Jim Henson and the ability to create this world that feels so real using practical effects, because this is like pre-CGI. And, there's one part where you can tell that it's on a green screen. But other than that, they do like pretty much everything. Well, there's one part with the firewalkers. I can't remember what they're called, but the ones whose heads come off. You can tell that's green screen. And you can tell that the owl was CGI, the computer animation, because it's 1986 computer animation.
Right.
And then there's a aspect of sexuality running through this film that I know I didn't pick up on as a kid, that I'm very curious about and really want to grapple with you.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm excited about this. Let's catch people up. Remind us what happens in this film.
So film starts, we meet Sarah, who is clearly someone who loves fantasy. When we meet her, she is practicing lines for like play or something in like kind of a generic old-timey dress in a park. It starts to rain. She realizes she's late to babysit for her baby brother, who is the son of her father and stepmother. She comes home, gets into a fight with her parents. Her stepmother is like, I'd love it if you were dating. You should be dating at your age, which is already a bit weird. And the parents leave. The baby, whose name is Toby, and that's actually his name. He's Toby Froud, who is son of Brian Froud, who worked on this and was one of the puppeteers. So anyone worried that little baby Toby was terrified being around like all these goblins? No, those were his friends. They were his family friends. It was his aunts and uncles. Anyway, Toby starts to cry. She's frustrated, as any 15-year-old would be, having to deal with a crying baby. She can't get him to calm down. And so she wishes that the goblins would come and take him away right now, which is a line from her play/book. And the Goblin King, who is David Bowie in all his glory and mulleted wig, shows up, takes the baby away, and she says, well, I want my brother back. And he says, all right, well, you've got 13 hours to make your way through my labyrinth. And so she sets off. First person she meets is a dwarf named Hoggle, who happens to be peeing into a pond when she comes upon him. He shows her the entrance. She gets a little bit lost. She's trying to keep track of where she's going by using lipstick to mark the way. But there are little creatures in the labyrinth that keeps moving her marks. She runs back into Hoggle again. She steals his jewelry. He has a bag full of jewelry and uses it to blackmail him, basically, into helping her. They come across Ludo, who is a giant creature a la Where the Wild Things Are. And he seems scary, so Hoggle runs away. She discovers that Ludo is actually a very gentle beast. The Goblin King threatens Hoggle with being sent to the Bog of Eternal Stench, and so gives him a poisoned peach to give to Sarah. And they get past the Bog of Eternal Stench, and he gives her the peach. She immediately kind of falls unconscious and has this dream of being in a ballroom with a whole bunch of masked revelers and David Bowie. She's wearing this gorgeous princess costume with the largest hair you've ever seen in your life.
And really big skirt.
Big
lots
skirt.
of hoops. I actually saw the costumes at the exhibit at the Maryland History, the Maryland Historical Society. That's not what it's called now. Maryland History and Culture. The Jim Henson exhibit there. That costume was on display, and it is big. I mean,
it's got huge shoulders big, too.
But like big puffy shoulders and this big, those cakes that they would make with the Barbie doll and the big dome for the skirt.
Yes.
That's the kind of dress we're talking here, people.
It's during that scene that we get another one of Bowie's wonderful songs. And she manages to wake up out of it, but doesn't remember where she is. And she seems to be back at home. There is a old woman puppet who has like all these things on her back, who is like in her room with her saying like, oh, you need to keep all of this, keep all your dolls, keep all your toys. And she remembers that she needs to save Toby and gets out. She's finds her friends, including now Sir Didymus, who is a dog. And what is Sir Didymus's steed's name? He rides
Sir Didymus is like a fox.
Yeah.
I always thought he was a fox. And he rides a dog who's a sheepdog who looks like a dog that we saw in the real world before, right?
Her dog Merlin. Yeah.
The dog's name is
Ambrosius.
Ambrosius, yeah.
Yes. So, and Ambrosius is a coward. And Sir Didymus is so brave, he's stupid. In any case, she reunites with all of them. They get to the Goblin City, they fight off the goblins, and she ends up in the castle where she has to confront Jareth by herself. And she ends up in a like MC Escher painting in the real world where Toby is upside down and backwards and she's trying to find him. And Jareth is like following her in impossible ways until she finally just jumps to get to Toby. It's like a leap of faith, and she lands and has her final confrontation with the Goblin King, where she remembers the line that she always forgets, which is, "You have no power over me," just as the clock strikes 13 and she is returned home. Toby is returned home, and she is kind of putting her things away when her parents get home from their date. And all of her friends from the Labyrinth show up, just kind of in mirrors saying like, hey, should you ever need us, we'll be here. And she says, you know what? I will need you sometimes in my life, every once in a while. And so they all show up in her room and have a big dance party while the owl that is the Goblin King looks on and then flies away.
It's a lot.
And I skipped a bunch of stuff too.
You did. All right. So now that we're more or less caught up with the plot, where do you want to start with this?
So I want to start with the question that has bothered me for a while, which is this a feminist movie? It does not pass the Bechdel test.
Yeah.
So the stepmother does not have a name in the movie. The novelization lets us know that her stepmother's name is Irene, but we don't get her name in the movie. She talks to the stepmother, but that's still even kind of about men. It's about her father. It's about them going on dates. It's about her taking care of her little brother Toby, and it's about her like, I'd assume you'd tell me if you had plans. I would love it if you had plans. You shouldn't be going on dates at your age.
Yeah.
So it's all in service of men.
Mm-hmm.
The only other female character we see is the old woman with the all of her stuff on her back.
The pack, yeah.
And so she talks to Sarah about all her stuff. So not about men, but she's not named.
She doesn't have a name, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So fails the Bechdel test. Now, that's low bar. It's part of what has bothered me is the fact that there are so many movies out there where you get a female protagonist, but everyone around her is a guy.
Yeah.
Like everything is male. In the same way that you'll get like the Golden Trio in Harry Potter, you get a girl. It can't ever be a Golden Trio where it's two girls and a guy.
Right.
You can never have more than one.
Right.
However, her resolution and her ability to prevail is something she does entirely on her own. She loves her friends. They help her. She helps them. But when it comes to the final confrontation, she says, I have to do this by myself because that's how it's done. And the line is, you have no power over me. And that felt good to me as a kid.
Yeah. I think there's also something in thinking about this, like, though Sarah is exceptional insofar as the Goblin King has taken note of her, she's not actually exceptional in like a Dana Scully kind of way. And the way in which she prevails is also not exceptional in that sort of way, right? It's actually very human and very accessible, right? To be able to kind of like find oneself and one's footing, even when being intimidated by someone older and stronger and whatever, more powerful. Yeah. But it's not sort of a, she was the smartest in a generation like Hermione, or she was, like
a medical doctor and a
FBI agent. And yeah. And so there's something about that feels at least different than the not like other girls kind of feminism that we have talked about several times on the show.
And there is some suggestion that she's one of many. When she shows up, Hoggle says, like, she says, I'm Sarah. He's like, yeah, I know.
Yeah, he says, of course you are. Right?
Of course you are.
Yeah, that was one of the articles that went through my feed that I was like, ooh, I don't know if I want to know this.
So, and then I read something yesterday where it was suggesting, like, where did goblins come from? Because Toby would have been turned into a goblin. Are they all younger siblings of teenage girls? Of Sarah's. And so the fact that she's one of many and is not exceptional. And then also her characterization early on. Now, I never had a problem with this growing up. When I was 7 watching it, she seemed like, the kind of cool, not quite real grown up that a 15-year-old looks like a 7-year-old. Yeah. And so it never occurred to me that the way that she responded to her parents was inappropriate. Now, some of it has to do with the fact that, like, I really hate I would love it if you had dates. Like, screw yourself, Irene. Like, you can have plans that are not romantic and it's still important.
Especially at 15. I mean, come on.
Yeah. But the way that she responds to her parents is very immature. Now, appropriate for her age.
Yeah. And we are not given the details of this, of how long this new marriage with stepmother has been around. But like the fact that a teenager would be acting out against dad and stepmom certainly didn't seem implausible. Even as an adult looking at it doesn't seem implausible the way that she behaves. But
all of it feels typical. She is responding in ways that are very typical for a teen girl. Yes. And that's great. That's great. So I appreciate that. Like there is an accessibility to this that is a kind of feminist telling of what it means to be a girl. And I appreciate that. But then on the other hand, you got the all male cast otherwise. And
when like more than half the cast are actually puppets.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not like, why would you, I mean, it seems fairly easy to change the gender of a puppet.
Yeah. So Ludo could have been female.
Ludo could have been Luda.
Yeah. Yeah.
And actually that would have been really awesome to have a female rock talker with all that strength. And that would have been amazing.
Yeah. Like Luisa from Encanto.
But different. But yes. But different. Yes. Just like a different way to show up.
Femininity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, part of also what I wonder about. So I looked up what Jim Henson was intending to do with this movie. And what he said in an interview that he wanted to show that Sarah was learning about taking responsibility for herself and her choices as she grows up and learning to kind of like embrace some aspects of adulthood while also recognizing that she doesn't have to lose who she is. She doesn't have to lose the fantastical part of her that loves stories and loves fantasy and loves to live in her dreams.
Right. The imagination.
She can do both. Yes. My favorite way of showing that. She gets very angry early on when she realizes that probably her stepmother has taken her teddy bear Lancelot and given it to Toby without her permission, which is bullshit. Like you don't take people's stuff without their permission. But it was just sitting above her bed, like it
on
was
a
just
shelf.
on display. It was on display. And so at the end, after she and Toby are safely back at home, she gives him Lancelot and said, "It's time for you to take care of Lancelot now," or something along those lines. And that is like a very beautiful way of showing that she's taking responsibility for herself and for her actions and recognizing the ways that she is growing up while still holding on to her love for the fantastic by sharing that love with her little brother. It's lovely. It's a lovely moment. But there's a lot of sexuality in this movie, which we reacted to as children.
Yeah.
Like we definitely saw it, even if we didn't understand what it was.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of want to go through real quick all the different ways that sex is invoked in this movie it's kind of odd. So when Jareth first arrives, he throws one of his spheres at her, one of his bubbles, and it turns into a snake.
But you don't want to spell out the snake imagery for me?
I think you can get it.
Okay. So Jareth meets her and throws his dick at her. All right. What's next?
She meets Hoggle and he's urinating, so he's got his penis
another
out.
Dick. Okay.
And then that's also like for a 15-year-old girl, that is like how she's most likely to encounter in the best of all possible worlds. That is how she is most likely to encounter a penis. At some point, she goes through a doorway and falls down into a pit of helping hands that are all the oubliettes, which is French for forget, or specifically oublier is to forget. Oubliette is a place of forgetting. And so those hands are holding her and grabbing her. And then it's pretty interesting that the threat is the bog of eternal stench. I had someone point out, and I think that this is kind of interesting, that like helping hands and the bog of eternal stench has to do with like burgeoning sexuality and masturbation.
And it is interesting that the hands ask her, like they stop her, they arrest her downward fall, and they're going to help her, and they say, "Do you want to go up or down?" And she's like, "Well, I'm already pointed down, so I'll go down," which I had never thought about the sort of innuendo of that until we're having this conversation right now.
She said down.
You didn't finish your thought about the eternal stench.
So the bog of eternal stench, that is something that an adolescent girl is probably going to feel very uncomfortable about, is the idea that things are changing, things might smell different when she goes down.
Right.
So that could, be, it's just interesting that is what they went with. Now, part of it is it's a children's movie and kids are going to think it's hilarious, and there's like farting noises. Yeah.
And there are farting noises from the like bubbles. And also there's something really, really funny when we get there in that scene that you didn't describe where like Ludo and Sarah are just like gagging with the smell of it, and Sir Didymus is like, "What? I don't smell anything," which is hilarious when you're 10.
Yes, just sweet air. So this is one of those things where like overthinking. Another aspect of this kind of burgeoning sexuality is when she is after eating the peach.
A peach. Mm-hmm.
A peach. I mean, it's only because you can't eat an eggplant with a hand.
Right, exactly. You wouldn't take a big bite out of an eggplant.
And it is about female sexuality, this film. But when she has the dream, she's in the bubble where they're dancing, it looks like a child's understanding of what adult romance looks like. You wear this beautiful dress, people are in masks and dancing. But what's interesting is that she and Jareth dance, but things start getting more and more frenzied among the other dancers.
Like the pace.
The pace gets more frenzied. There's some weird, like one of the masks or several of them have a long nose, and you see someone kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. Yeah, like kind of like masturbating.
Really? I don't remember that.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna have to go back and watch that scene again.
an excellent song. And so when she decides to try to leave, she smashes the bubble with a chair, and like everything is coming to a frenzy. She then like kind of floats in the air, and so it really does kind of seem like what it's like to orgasm.
Like a build and then a climax.
A build and then a climax.
And then a release.
A release where you
weightless.
feel like you're floating. Yeah. So,
Jim Henson, man.
I know. I mean, I think it's like once you got David Bowie associated, what else can you do?
It just happens.
Just happens.
By association, everything gets sexier.
Yeah. And then the way that Jareth speaks to her in the final confrontation is he says, "Love me, fear me, do as I say, and I will be your slave." Weird. That's really weird. What is it he's actually asking of her there? And I have seen, so I think that it's reasonable to look at this, especially with what Henson intended, and have it be like, as a child who's going through these, you know, very big life changes in terms of family, but also body changes, going through puberty and all of that, to be a little afraid of it, and afraid also what that's going to mean, like that you can no longer be a kid, and then come to the realization, no, I can contain multitudes. Like I can enjoy those helping hands and that bog of eternal stench, and also party with Hoggle and Ludo and Sir Didymus. It's like there's no dichotomy there.
I don't disagree, but I want to go back to love me, fear me, do as I say, and I will be your slave. Like, where does that? I'm like,
well, and that's part of the reason why. So that gets to the other possible interpretation. That's a lot darker.
Oh.
Sarah lives with her father and stepmother. In the very beginning, you see her looking at a scrapbook, and she's got pictures on her mirror of her mother, who is an actress. For years, I assumed her mother was just dead.
Yeah, that's definitely what I assumed.
Always assumed she was dead.
Yeah.
If you read the novelization, it turns out no, she's not dead. She and her and Sarah's father divorced. Her mother's an actress, and she is dating another actor whose name is Jeremy, and who is played by, in that there's a photograph, as David Bowie. There's a photograph of Sarah's mother,
Mom and Bowie.
and Bowie, which puts a very different cast on things. Now, it could be that she has a crush on Jeremy because he's David Bowie.
David Bowie. I mean, join the club, Sarah.
Yeah. Can't blame you there. But I have not read the novelization. I'm basing this on interpretations I've read.
This feels like an important parenthetical. Like, is the novelization, was it like authorized by?
Yes. It was authorized and contemporaneous.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
So it's canon.
Okay, yes. It is canon. All right. Cool.
Yes.
All right, carry on.
So there are further, like there was like a second and third book that are not necessarily related, and I think some of them were graphic novels, but the novelization, this is like back when novelizations of movies came out pretty regularly. They'd put them out at the same time. So in that, we know that Jeremy is fond of Sarah, that he has taken her dancing, and that he made a comment, not taking her dancing, but they went out to dinner, the three of them, and they danced. And he said something about how the paparazzi are going to think you and I are together, or something like that, in the novel.
And she's 15.
She's 15. So there is the potential interpretation that what she's dealing with is not just a crush and not just burgeoning sexuality, but having dealt with being groomed or molested by her mother's boyfriend.
Yuck.
And then that puts Jareth's lines at the end in a really weird context, because he says, like, you're so ungrateful. I have rearranged the world for you. I have stopped time. I have done this. You know, like, why is what I'm doing not good enough for you? Which sounds like the words of an abuser. And then the line, love me, fear me, do as I say, and I will be your slave, also sounds like something an older man would say to which sounds like something an older man would say to a teenage girl who's always been told she's mature for her age,
Yeah.
and seems malleable to him.
It sounds too like it sounds like a Dom talking to,
And
like trying to convince a person to be their sub
yes,
in a BDSM relationship.
and it's honestly like it's a little too on the nose, because
For that.
in a gaslighting relationship, it would be much subtler and take longer. But that is like, whenever, I don't know if you read "Am I the Asshole" on Reddit. I really
rarely.
love it.
Usually it's when you send them to me.
Yeah. So some of them, and this is an outgrowth of my love for advice columns.
Yeah.
But basically you see a bunch which are like the immediately, like there's an age difference. You're like, oh God. And the age difference is always in one direction, not the other. And it's where this child, like this young girl, has been groomed by an older man to love him, fear him, and do what he says. So like it's a lot more straightforward there. And part of it has to do with this is a fantasy. And, you know, if we do take that interpretation, she knows that's what he wants from her subconsciously. And so she puts it like very straightforward into Jareth's mouth. So that makes it easier for her to say, you have no power over me. That sounds like a bad deal to me.
Totally.
It's disturbing thinking of it that way.
It's really disturbing thinking of it that way because of how much I loved it and how much I loved the David Bowie, like
Yeah.
presence. And also, to your original question, is this a feminist film? Like, if that is in fact what is sort of happening in real life, is that this child is using this fantasy as a way to process and make it so that she can do what she knows is right. Like that she can act on that voice that's saying this is not okay. So she like projects the potential abuser or maybe abuser. I mean, I guess we don't know, into this Goblin King who is scary and sexy, but she can actually confront it, and she does and wins. Like that's actually very empowering if I think about it that way.
That's the way that I can kind of be okay with that interpretation, is thinking about women, young children, anyone who has been in that position, and how much this movie would mean to them. That it gives a construct for dealing with it.
I think too, like, I'm glad you named that line, because I think saying it in that way explicitly, so clearly a bad deal. And to your point that it wouldn't ordinarily be offered in that way, unless, I mean, I'm imagining like adult folks who are already in the scene, the BDSM scene, sort of this is where they agree to proceed, but in a less consensual and in a less like even power dynamic, it would, as you say, it would not be presented so plainly. And so to have it set up so plainly so that the person with less power can be like, oh wait, yeah, that's a bad deal. Yeah, there's something really poignant and powerful about that. Yeah.
And so that brings in, I mentioned early on that I need to grapple with the less admirable aspects of Bowie's life. There's only one that I know of for sure that like it makes my heart clutch, which is there is a story from one of the baby groupies, that's what they called themselves, who claimed that she lost her virginity to David Bowie. She was 14 years old. He was in his 30s, and at the height of his fame, and you know, he was going on tour, and so he was pretty used to getting to his hotel room and finding a naked woman there. And that's what she did. She just was in his bed naked. This is not like Jimmy Page, who actually like kidnapped a girl. She was 15 and kept her for a year.
Ew, I didn't know that.
God, it's awful. It's awful. So it's not like that at all, but it's still like in that power dynamic, he had the power. So I don't know if it's true. I found something relatively recently that talked about how the woman who claims that has some like aspects of her story that don't fit, which doesn't mean that it's not true, but just means that the way that she tells it can't be true. But I very much am like, believe women. So there's that. Then earlier this year, I was looking up, I found a behind the scenes making of about Labyrinth, which was really interesting because Gates McFadden, who played Beverly Crusher on Star Trek The Next Generation, is apparently a dancer and choreographer, and she did the choreography for this movie, and I had no idea.
Yeah, wow.
It was just like, it was like when I found out that Paul Simon had been married to Carrie Fisher. I'm like, I didn't know those two parts of my like pop culture childhood connected to each other. This is so cool. Anyway, one of the things that they included some of the interviews with the actors, including David Bowie and Jennifer Connelly, who plays Sarah. Jennifer Connelly was 15 at the time. I always had assumed she was like 18 or 19 and playing younger because she looks older than 15.
For sure.
Although looking now, knowing that she's 15, I can see it, if you know what I mean, as a 44-year-old watching this. And Bowie is talking about how much respect he has for Jennifer Connelly, how impressed he is with her. But the way he puts it is that she's so lovely and so mature for her age, which really squicked me out because he was 38. And also because I was the one getting the, like, you're an old soul, you're mature for your age from older men when I was like as young as 13.
Yeah.
And even, I mean, I think I was 11 the first time I had an adult man hit on me.
Ew.
Yeah.
My daughter's 11.
I'm sorry. That, I think, is less to do about David Bowie himself and more to do with the way, especially in the 80s, although still to this day, we consider it appropriate to talk about girls and women.
Yeah.
But that is the atmosphere that this film was made in.
Yeah.
And so there is some weirdness to that as well. You know, they don't sexualize Sarah in the film. Like, she wears appropriate clothing, and even like the costume that we were talking about, the ball gown costume, is beautiful, but not like plunging neckline or anything like that.
I don't think anybody would consider it immodest. It doesn't show off the figure in any specific ways.
Sexualized. It's just a ball gown. It's just lovely. It's the way that a girl would think about looking pretty.
Yeah, yeah. And her, through most of it, she's wearing jeans and I can't remember what kind of blouse and like a vest. It's very not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a both end is what's going on with this movie. Like, this does not feel as childhood ruining as when we talked about Ghostbusters.
Agreed. That was awful.
and I will not stop my adoration of Bowie. Like, I still revere him. I wish that he could have existed in a world that recognized the importance and autonomy of women, because he would have risen to that. Like, because I know that he, in the 1980s, he was interviewed on MTV about something, and he made sure to take the time to call out MTV for not including Black artists during prime time. They saved hip hop, R&B, and rap for like after 10 p.m. Yeah.
It was like its own show. It was like, here's music and here's Black people music.
Yeah. And it didn't play until like 11 p.m. So like, you and I weren't exposed to rap music because we were watching it 4 in the afternoon after school.
Yeah. Yeah.
So like, I know he could have risen to that challenge.
He also did amazing things around gender and gender expression, like long before we had the word non-binary to describe or gender fluid or gender queer. Like, he was pushing on binaries in terms of gender expression.
Yes.
Before we even fully understood. No, let me rephrase that. Before we as a society were
pushing back against the binary.
Recognizing that we were living in a binary. It just was natural and normal.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh. Okay.
There is a cracked.com video from about 8 years ago that I will link in the show notes that talks about some of this, like about how the movie might be about masturbation. And it starts with, there's like a male cracked.com employee is talking to a female cracked.com employee about Labyrinth. And he was just like, let's talk about David Bowie's dick. And she's like, you've got my attention. And so by the end of it, they talk through this whole thing, and she gets up because they're supposed to be in the office. Like, that's where so she gets up. She's like, all right, I'm going to go rub one out. I'll see you in a bit. I'll link that in the show notes because it is very funny. but it's like Bowie, man.
It's an interesting question that this brings up, like, since it was a Henson production, and like what you said about what his intention was with it, and some of the things we have talked about even in this show where we see misogyny or other hierarchical thinking that we don't, like, we've said, like, Rob Reiner was not like, I'm gonna make a misogynist movie. He just wrote what he knew from the society that, you know, like he just did. And like, so I'm wondering, which I'll never know the answer, but it's an interesting kind of hypothetical to think about, like, how much of this sexual content subtext, the sexual subtext, was conscious on the part of Henson and the other movie makers, and how much of it just, this is how we tell stories. These are stories that are interesting. And like, just as we as the consumers weren't thinking too deeply into the potential symbolism that we were watching, maybe the movie makers weren't either. They just were like, oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
You know, like I
Walk
don't.
of a Turtle Bench is funny. Like
funny.
the helping.
Exactly.
Well, one of the things that was interesting was seeing how when they talked about they realized they were going to do the helping hands, how they had the puppeteers figure out how to make faces. Like that's another. I'll link to this behind the scenes video as well, because that was fascinating.
So
like how they did it,
like where they made like the, like two hands to be the eyes and the mouth, and like that. I loved that as a kid.
That was
and it was
amazing.
Also really like. So it's called Labyrinth, and we had that game, that Labyrinth game with the marble that you had to like twist in different ways. And so when she falls into the oubliette, like I just assume like it's the game, and she's the marble and just fell into one of the holes and had to go back to the beginning, right? So there was that piece of it's not even symbolism; it's just structure, right? And so,
well, everything that's in the labyrinth is in the real world. So like she has a labyrinth game in her room. She has a figurine that looks like the Goblin King on her dresser.
I remember that.
Her
is a little figurine as well.
Yes. And Ludo comes from Where the Wild Things Are. Like everything is from her room. And so like the MC Escher print that she has above her bed, which is like what happens at the end, it's very well constructed because they thought through each and every one of those details.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it was in fact the hole for the marble in the labyrinth game. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Any other insights you want to tease out, or should I mean, we've been talking for almost an hour.
I got a fluff that I got to share. There's the two knockers. One has the
that's the ones I mentioned from my memory. Yeah, where they have like a riddle.
So no. Those are a different one. The riddle are the knockers. One has the ring in his mouth, and the other
mouth, and the other's ears.
Ears. I find myself thinking, it's no use. Can't hear you. Consistently that, and like that's okay, I'm used to it. When she manages to get the
she holds his nose,
his nose
his
to
mouth
get the
again,
ring.
she can put the ring back in. Yeah,
it's okay, I'm used to it. Both of those run through my mind 3 times a week.
Funny. It's funny. All right, I'm gonna try and recap. I say synthesis, but I'm not actually synthesizing. I'm just recapping. So I'm gonna recap what I heard you talk about, and then you can fill in. So we started with this question of whether or not this film can be considered a feminist film, and I think it's like a mixed answer is what I'm hearing. Like, does not pass Bechdel test, so not a good sign. On the other hand, Sarah finds strength and bravery to confront fears on her own, not in a she's not like other girls kind of a way. So maybe. Kind of both. And we talked about the intention that Henson brought to it, which was that he wanted to show a story of Sarah starting to take responsibility for her own actions while recognizing that she does not have to leave behind the things that she loves from her childhood. We talked about subtext of sex in this movie and whether or not that was intentional. And there's kind of a lot of it. There's several dicks hanging out, and one literally with Hoggle peeing. And then there's also the sort of possible references to masturbation. There is the increasingly rapid frenzy of activity in a bubble, which then bursts, and then we're weightless. There is also a couple of the interpretations which we get from the novelization, but also from other commentators talking about potentially the Jareth represents a real man in the real world, mom's boyfriend, who at best Sarah has a crush on, and at worst is actually grooming or already molesting her, and her kind of processing that. And one of the, I think, comforting, satisfying consequences of if that's the case is that this movie then provides girls and others who might be in that grooming situation kind of a model, and also says explicitly, this is a bad deal and you don't have to take it, in terms of love me, fear me, do what I say, and I will be your slave. And then finally, you investigated a little bit of like your hero worship of David Bowie, when there were moments when he behaved less than heroically, though perhaps not absolutely villainously either, but rather he was a product of his time, which was less than heroic. Did I forget anything?
No, I think that's a pretty good.
I think what I forgot actually in my recap is that this is just a delightful film.
Oh gosh, yes.
Beautiful music, really fun puppets and practical effects. To your point, this is not like from the 80s. This is not the sort of CGI fantasy that we get today. And there's something just charming about these practical effects and the magic and imagination of Henson Studios. From the costumes, including the stuffed crotch of David Bowie, to the puppets, the ones that you mentioned that are on green screen, the sort of fire guys who like can take their heads off and toss them around. And
that Escher creation that was entirely real and done with practical effects.
And like there's one moment where Bowie changes planes on the Escher. Like it's like he steps, but he like circles like 180 and it's facing the other way. It's awesome. I mean, it's just really, really charming. So I think that that's something that I didn't name yet that I want to make sure that we leave our listeners with.
I will say that is the one part, because I know people have been like, that poor kid Toby must have been traumatized, being around these Muppets, but they're his family, because like both his mother and father were puppeteers or Muppeteers. But as an adult who has had children, seeing him sitting on the stairs in the Escher section, I'm just like, he's gonna fall. That's what freaks me out. How did they make sure he didn't fall? So yeah.
All right. Wow. Well, this was fun. What are we going to talk about next time?
So next time I'm going again. Usually we try to trade off, but next time, because 'tis the season, we are going to be talking about A Christmas Story. You'll shoot your eye out.
Sure, with the sexy leg. And that's where the sexy lamp.
Yes.
The sexy lamp trope comes from.
It does indeed. So I am very excited to talk about that with you.
All right. Well, talk to you soon.
See you then.
Hey, podcast listener. Yeah, you. A number of folks have been reaching out to us privately with their own memories or deep thoughts about our deep thoughts. Aaron told me that our brief conversation about Poltergeist in the Ghostbusters episode brought back some scary childhood memories. Marion, hi mom, pointed out that Fred Savage's dad in The Princess Bride was probably at work and that we were maybe overthinking that idea. Jake pointed out to us that we had completely missed the negative and potentially harmful stereotypes of Roma people that underlie Robin Hood and Little John's cross-dressing as fortune tellers in Disney's Robin Hood. We want to hear what you're thinking, but I bet other listeners do too. We have a forum feature on our website at guygirlsmedia.com. Come join the conversation. I'll put the link in the show notes. Come on over. Let us know. What did we miss? What surprised you? Did we inspire any deep thoughts for you? Be in touch. Thanks for listening. Our theme music is Professor Umlaut by Kevin MacLeod from incompetech.com. Find full music credits in the show notes. Until next time, remember, pop culture is still culture. And shouldn't you know what's in your head?